Two experts in ICF.
Yeah.
Decades of experience. One podcast.
Yeah.
Two hosts with a lot to say.
Look, I cannot sit through a struggle. I gotta get up and hustle. I gotta push through the pain, cause really that's how you build muscle.
Welcome to the Build With ICF podcast with your hosts, Trevor Brown and Heather Herring Brown. Yep, they're a package deal. With over 20 years of ICF installation experience, Trevor can throw down some expertise on sales, marketing, and training. On the other side of the table sits Heather, aka the girl boss. And she's earned the title as the owner of an award-winning ICF construction company, a drafting and design company specializing in ICF. And the numbers? With a master's in accounting, she does that too. Sleeves up, boots on. This is the Build With ICF podcast.
I don't want nothing for free. I'm here to work. I've been through the dirt. I've been through the dirt, yeah.
Well, good morning. Episode, 74, I think?
74.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, was a great year. A lot of amazing people born in 1974. That was a really, really good year, especially for podcast hosts.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
amazing.
Yeah. If anybody has not picked up on his subtleness, he was born in 74.
November 20th, if anyone wants to send me any birthday presents or anything, that's fine. It's November 20th.
All right.
Scorpio.
Okay. Anyways, back to business. Today, well, I guess we just got back from PCBC not too long ago, which is Pacific Coast Building Conference out in San Diego. And we got the opportunity to go and have dinner with one of our WICFA members. And I guess before we jump into that too far, should we have a word from our sponsor?
Thank you, Heather. I thought you'd never ask. The ICF industry finally has a unified voice. The World Insulated Concrete Form Association, or WICFA as we like to call it, has launched a support advocacy. God, that word gets me every time. Advocacy.
Cut.
Let's try it again. Advocacy, education, and industry growth. Be a part of it right now. If you're a builder, manufacturer, engineer, distributor, or industry professional who believes in building stronger, more resilient structures, this is for you. Come visit us at wicfa.org. That's WICFA.org. Or you can get on at buildwithicf.com and join us as well. And this is a great transition into our guest to Lance Wolfsmith, and he is literally one of our members. That's how we met him. I've seen him on Instagram and you start to follow people in the ICF world that are popping up on ICF stuff. And so I'd seen him online, and then he joined, and then he reached out and said, "Hey, I heard you guys are at PCBC. Let's try to get together." And we got to spend almost 3 days with him. So it was pretty good talking about you in third person, like you're not here, Lance, but Lance is on here with us and going to tell us, we got to hear all about kind of how he's coming into this and new into the industry. And he put in the time at PCBC with us and learned a lot in his hometown, San Diego. So it's pretty cool. But Lance, thank you for being on with us today and jumping on here and telling your story. So why don't you give us a little, hey, who you are, and we'll get into it.
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me. Yeah, I had a blast with you guys at PCBC. Yeah, so I'm Lance Wolfsmith, very new to the industry with Wolven Homes. We're down in San Diego, focusing right now on ADUs. That's the big boom down here. And yeah, I kind of consider myself an ICF missionary. It's so obvious, and just trying to spread the word down here. And super pumped to be part of WICFA. When I first met you guys, I told you I wish it's kind of bittersweet. Had I found you guys years ago, I would have never started Wolven because I would have just used you and I would have solved all my problems. That wasn't my experience. So yeah, through a lot of anger and personal pain points, it just jumped right into the deep end.
Tell us a little bit, because you've got a really cool story, coming from a military background and stuff. And tell us a little bit about, you're a young guy. So, you don't have quite the storied history that some of us old white bearded guys do, but you do have a really cool story coming up into this. Tell us a little bit how you started, what you thought you were going to do, and kind of how you ended up where you're at right now.
Yeah. So last September, I separated from active duty. Spent 11 years as an Air Force officer. Most of my career was spent in acquisitions. So program management of, some pretty high tech defense programs. And I was super blessed to get stationed in San Diego. And when I moved here, I was lucky to buy a home that was zoned to be able to add on to it. And so I was like, okay, I grew up, I have no previous experience in the trade or no professional experience in the trades, but my whole family does. And so I grew up around that and I was like, you know what? Let's just try to build something. It was pretty in line with my professional experiences. I just decided, let's apply this to some new construction and figure out how to do this. And that was 5 years ago. And I'm now doing, the first project. So there were four years of frustration and pain to get to this point. But yeah, I guess on the military side, I had all these expectations of, how really complex programs come together, a lot of experience in advanced manufacturing. And so when I went to build my own, the very first thought was there's got to be some new innovative way to do this. And, ended up landing on ICF, found out it's actually not all that new. But for whatever reason, being in San Diego, it's like we're cursed with our good weather. It hasn't really created the incentives for people to actually change the way that they're doing things. And so, yeah, I'm sure we'll get into more of that in the podcast. But this is one of those things. Like I don't get to talk ICF that much, so when I actually do, we can go a million different directions and speak for a long time.
Though, and you do that was what was like literally infectious about sitting and talking with you is like your passion about it. Like it's so great to the yin and yang of like me being in it. Like 25 years, I feel like it's been 125 years because it's just been that long and a long road to hoe kind of deal. It's so cool to hear like somebody new coming in with that kind of excitement. And like I said, getting to spend 3 days with you at PCBC and like hear you literally just like preaching it. And I feel like you have a little bit different take, and I think Heather and I kind of talked about this. You're looking at it because, like you said, in San Diego, like it's hard in these moderate climate places to sell ICF sometimes. You guys don't have hurricanes. You don't have fire. Well, I mean, you could have fire, but you don't have, a lot of natural disaster doesn't happen in San Diego. That's what makes San Diego so amazing, right? Like you don't have all these selling points. But what you're looking at it from, and this goes back to your military background and project management background, is the efficiency side. Like you preach a lot of, we can do this better. We can do this more efficiently. We don't have to be, we're wasting time. And you're talking the entire construction process. Like, I mean, you see a bigger picture than most people do. And you just see how that ICF kind of fits into that, part of it. And to kind of transition that back to, because I do want to talk a little bit about PCBC because you were there as another, I mean, you're seeing it from a different angle than we saw it. But I thought was very interesting is a lot of the presentations that we went to at PCBC was people talking about rebuilds and what we're having to do to get more homes on the market, because that's the only way we're going to make affordable homes. They're not going to go down in price. We have to get more of them on the market to get the price, to get the affordability down. We need, it's a supply and demand thing. So we need to get more houses out there, which again, we'll get into a little later because that's why the ADUs are so popular in San Diego. But you've got all these things that they're just preaching. And we got to build more homes and we need to build them faster because especially in the rebuild areas, I mean, we've got, 10,000, keep hearing different numbers, but 7,000, 10,000 homes that were destroyed that need to be rebuilt. And really the only way we're going to get ahead of that or get caught up even is going to be through efficiency. So that was a lot of I know Heather, you heard a lot of that in the conversation with them is like how people are doing this more efficiently. You've seen it from the drafting side where California is making changes to how they do things because they've got to get more stuff built from a permitting standpoint, let alone, just trying to find a efficient system to rebuild this in. But I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Well, I was going to say just, affordability is not just what it costs to build the house. It's what it costs to maintain the house, month over month for your utility bills and then year over year with your maintenance costs. And so that
insurance.
Insurance. That's a big thing that in California that they were talking about. And so what we've seen from the drafting and the design side of it is a lot of jurisdictions are easing up on some of their regulations with regards to who can draw plans. So I know that there's, different codes in play in California where you have to have an architect and an engineer in many cases. And now they have reduced some of those to where up to a certain square footage, up to certain heights, up to there's boundaries to it, but you can use a draftsman with full engineering, which speeds up the process, reduces costs. And then when you can work with a drafting company, that understands ICF, we can also increase efficiencies on the build and decrease waste and all that kind of stuff. So lots of things, lots of possibilities in California. And that was one of the things we learned a lot about, we were talking to people about at PCBC.
Because the insurance thing was obviously a big buzzword. Obviously, we're hearing a lot of stuff about insurance in California. That's a big deal. And a lot of these places aren't saying, oh, we're going to pull our insurance from everywhere but San Diego, right? So
Correct.
Even though San Diego doesn't have these threats and stuff, they're saying like a lot of these insurance companies are just saying we're pulling from California, like the state. So everybody in the state's got to be a little more, aware of what's going on from the insurance standpoint, and be able to like what the verbiage they're using, a lot of it is non-combustible building materials, right? And so that's what ICF falls under, is the non-combustible side. So that is where I think we can get that in. What's interesting is you're seeing, and we see this nationwide, we talk about all the time with NHB and everybody, but ADUs is like the hot topic.
Which I just saw somebody was talking about ADUs on one of the Facebook groups, and it wasn't in one of the ICF ones, but it was another one. And they're like, what's an ADU? And so I was like, okay, ADU, accessory dwelling unit. It's written into most of the codes. Some areas have square footage requirements that you have to stay underneath, but they are a secondary living space on your home or on your lot. Can be attached to your home, could be separate from your home.
Fondly known as the mother-in-law quarters.
Yes.
That's kind of what a lot of old people call it, right? That's the mother-in-law quarters. But so Lance, why don't we because you have a expert. I mean, this is kind of what you're leaning into, right? I mean, you go check out, and we'll have a link to your website and everything in the show notes so everybody can go check you out and see your social medias and stuff. But you've got some great designs for some ADUs and stuff. But like, give us a little bit of your, what you see in San Diego from that standpoint of the ADU thing and why you're leaning into that. You told us all about, kind of what you're seeing. I think it's probably could be one of the hottest markets for ADUs in the country. And anyways, I just want to hear your take on ADUs in San Diego.
Yeah, it's funny because when people talk about real estate and construction, it's usually at a national level and all these trends, but every market is very different. And in San Diego, I feel like unless you've spent a lot of time here, a lot of people don't know that ADUs are the vast majority of new construction down here. We're in a metro area that we don't have land to build on. And so most of the development here is all infill residential. So you got your larger developments, developers knocking down old structures, building apartments, and then you have people just loading up ADUs on these properties, which it's a whole different discussion of some of those strategies. I'm not totally for or against them, but like my street specifically, I've got 5 ADUs going up right now. Not me personally, but just on my 150-yard street, there's 5 ADUs currently in construction. And that trend is happening all throughout San Diego. And they're all going up with stick framing. And it's, directly across the street from me, they're putting up, I think, 17 units on a property. And when it was being framed, just, because I got a straight shot, down their lot, and it's like, those walls don't look straight to me. It's just funny that, even building out my network here, you've got all these professionals that they literally have never heard of ICF. They have no idea about it. And that was such a bizarre moment for me. Just, I tend to, when I'm passionate about something, I'm pretty obsessive. So, I could talk about ICF for hours years ago before I'd even touched any of it, just because I had gone down all those rabbit holes. But it's so weird to me that, ICF it's not an uncommon build product. If you're in any cold state, the Southeast, the northern states, at a minimum, people are familiar with it as a basement product. And so it's just very weird to me that these architects and general contractors just don't even know what the rest of their industry is building with. And so, yeah, sorry, this is one thing I'm gonna have to keep myself on track with, because I do have a tendency to go in a bunch of different directions, but ADUs are huge down here. The affordability issue is kind of where I've focused on, because they're such a valuable asset to homeowners if you can actually build them. It unlocks generational housing, makes a home more affordable for people, assuming you can build it at the right price. But there's tons of roadblocks right now with our construction prices being so high that these opportunities are really reserved for sophisticated developers. And so that's what I'm seeing in my neighborhood is all these great lots are just being bought up by the people that have the money to build all these ADUs, and they're pushing the homeowners out. And I don't want to get, preachy and political, but for me, that was really the why behind why Wolven was started. It requires a team, and it requires a lot of expertise to take advantage of it right now. And I'm trying to position Wolven to be able to help out homeowners to take advantage of what is a really great opportunity. But right now, there's a lot of barriers to actually achieving that.
Well, that's what honestly, one of the biggest things like about you is that you're coming from a good place of like, I'm trying to make this not so hard. Like, great. Like you're looking at it from a standpoint of like, okay, this was a little difficult for me. It doesn't have to be this difficult for somebody else. And that's
let me help you with this.
And I mean, and I think that's why we get along so good is I think you see that's the whole reason this podcast even exists. Like, I mean, we don't get paid to do this podcast. We don't, this isn't a thing that is, our living. We're not podcasters. We build ICF houses. We sell ICF. We do stuff. But we just found out that like there's so many people that want to know about it that shouldn't have to go through all the pain that we have. And so we do every episode trying to bring people's knowledge that maybe is going to stop them from doing that. And it's so interesting to hear, even at your new, very new into this industry, you're literally one of your biggest drivers is you're like, dude, it doesn't have to be this hard. I don't want people to have to go through all the crap that you did, right? So that's what I think is really awesome. You're coming from a good place. It's coming from your heart. You're trying to like, let's make this easier and make it a system. I love the fact because you do have like way more than I am not an organized person. Heather will probably laugh. Yeah. See, I knew she'd laugh as soon as I said that. I'm not an organized person at all. Thank God Heather is, because I'm not. I love listening to how that's your thing, right? Like you're that's a passionate, strong thing for you. If you can get that to where that you can put that into other people's projects, then that's where you're going to just blow up and go great, right? And I think the interesting thing is you've got ICF plays into that so good, because like we draw plans through the drafting company, Innovative Drafting and Design. We design it to the block you're using. Like you use Nudura, that's your block that you've been using, and even Nudura is getting into, like, I just was watching some of their videos they're really getting into the pre-cut stuff, right? Like where you can order the job pre-cut from Nudura. That's pretty cool. I'm really anxious to see how that's going to come along in the future, because I think that could be a big game changer for us. But like watching, you be able to say, like, because if people could come to you and just be like, hey, Lance, I want to do this ADU, but I don't even know where to start and I don't know how to do this. And for you to be able to help those people and compete with those big developers, right? We're an independent builder. We have nationals coming in all around us, and we know exactly what it feels like to watch somebody go and buy, 500 acres and build a subdivision on it, and you can't get in because you're not a big enough builder. You're not part of that development or build team. So, I mean, it's really cool to see people kind of trying to help the smaller guys do that. And that's why I think, back to the ADU thing in San Diego, the one thing that I think is a huge deal is you're talking about putting all these in. the soundproofness is probably one of the biggest selling points for ICF on an ADU in a metro area, especially that doesn't have weather issues, is that sound quality. Like you're putting these houses right in subdivision, right in next to another house. You're putting it next to a road. You're putting it, a lot of it's going to be, there's going to be a noise issue. So I think that the, high STC ratings is going to be something that would be really good. So it's, something I see systematically. The sound, these are all the things that are just going to go crazy for you at the, in San Diego as the ADU thing takes off. But
one of the things that Lance, you brought up when we were having dinner is you were talking about you went with Nudura because of how it's shipped. And I didn't even think about this because you're working on infill lots. You don't have a lot of space. Like we build, I have acres of space.
We'll drive a 53-foot semi into our job site.
Not a big deal.
You were like, that's not happening.
You're like, that's not happening here. And so it was very interesting to hear. So talk to me a little bit about that on specifically on your current job site right now. You were talking about when they delivered the block and
you're like, oh God.
No, that was actually, I did not think through that one. That was a hard lesson. That was not why I picked Nudura originally. I was really drawn to how they kind of think of everything as a system, and just with my background, that was very appealing to me. They've also been very supportive. Shout out to Brian Bordier. He's been great to work with. But yeah, that's, especially dealing with ADUs, I went through the installation training. I've done countless hours of just, YouTube videos, every single informational material I can get my hands on before I actually got the materials on site. And so I was very confident going into the first build, but I wasn't ready to put the walls up. The delivery, I had some delays in the foundation. And so the delivery came before I'd even excavated the ground. And fortunately, I did pick Nudura because it ships, flat. It took up my entire front yard. I can't even, I truly don't know what I would have done had I gone with a different block that didn't ship flat, because there's just no space for it. I'm in the city of San Diego. These aren't big lots. I've got an 8,000 square foot lot, and pretty much the whole backyard is a construction site right now that we need all the space for. And so luckily I have a little bit of a side yard driveway that I've put the materials in, but it filled that all up. It's an eyesore for my neighbors right now. Things that I never thought about it. I never thought I wasn't going to have the space for it, because you don't realize how much space materials, when it's on the structure, it doesn't look like that much, but when it's flat packed and off to the side, it's a lot of material. And
I could imagine. I could imagine like those your neighbors that are building with firewood, as Trevor would say, with lumber. Like when that lumber pack gets delivered, it's dropped. It's sitting there because it's not. I mean, you're not moving that until you're ready to use it. At least with the ICF, you can move it around and try to stack it up a little bit higher, take up less space. With lumber, it is what it is.
Yes, that's true. I think what they do, just because there's such a good distribution network, at least in my area, they don't deliver it all at once. They deliver it, in phases. Because of course, if they delivered the entire thing, they'd be running the same problem. But I never thought about it, because we're doing the walls and the roof. So I've got both. The roof takes up just as much. The roofing materials take up just as much space as the walls do. So it was a lot.
So tell us where you're at, like right now. Like what's been, kind of give us your stages. Like, what's your thoughts as you put down those first blocks and you're, moving your way up the wall and doing so. What's your thought process of how it's going right now?
It's going great. I'm looking at the structure right now outside my window. They're perfectly straight and plumb. So we have walls completely up. I've had the same crew doing the foundation, and they'll go all the way through the roof. So that's been really nice. Nothing's been subbed out. It was a big priority for me to get my hands on every single aspect of this build so that I learned all the pain points. One of the big things that we're focusing on with Wolven is, the goal is to make every successive build more efficient. So, every day that I've got my hands on this, I'm taking notes. Okay, what did we waste a lot of time on? Is there a better way to do this in the future? So, I remember talking with you guys a lot, just the dowels coming out of the footings, like how much of a problem that caused for us. And so for the next build, we're gonna, it's funny because just 2 days ago, I went back through the installation manual that Nidura publishes, and it's like, make sure that your dowels are at 8-inch spacing. It's like, I wish I hadn't overlooked that, because that.
I wish they weren't 4 feet tall or 4 feet in the air or whatever. What did you end up putting? Your uprights came out really tall.
Yeah, we didn't. Yeah, I have a great relationship with my engineer, love him to death. James Lane is a fantastic ICF specialist. But one thing in the plans, the verticals coming out of the footings, they didn't have a height on them. They had the spacing on them, but yeah, we made them, our mindset, the guys that are on my crew, they're concrete contractors, and it's just like a joke. It's like, more concrete, more strong, more rebar, more strong. So we went pretty tall with those footing dowels, and they were at 9 inches, and there's a lot of conflicts when they don't line up with your webs.
Well, and you're having to slide them over, like the taller they are. We laugh because Heather and I dealt with a church years ago that we didn't do it, but we ended up going and doing a little bit of consulting.
Well, we ended up getting a ton of phone calls about, because
you're like, hey, you need to come help these guys. And it was a church where the people were building it themselves, and they didn't really have support. They didn't have a local rep, and so there was, we ended up getting kind of called in to help them. And it was like, I can't remember, it was like Russian or Ukrainian.
I can't
Anyways,
remember.
it was but a lot of them didn't speak English and didn't understand this, but their dowels were coming out like 8 or 9 feet in the air out of the footing. And so, like, you can imagine having to slide every block over, 9 feet and shimmying it down the rebar every single block, where we're used to just going stack, 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 stack. We're like, no, you got to crawl up a ladder 12 feet in the air and then slide this thing over it. It was crazy. So it could have been worse. At least yours weren't 9 feet tall. So, but those are the things that people don't think about. And that's why that's why we do this podcast. That's why we bring people on. It's like, it's funny. You overlook something in the manual of 8-inch versus 9-inch, or how tall to do your dowels or something. Like, those things don't happen, or you don't think about them until they happen. Right. So, like, I love it, 'cause you're learning this stuff as you go. You're just like, okay, now I know that,
Well, and Lance, correct me if I'm wrong, but you did not have, so when you decided to do ICF, you kind of started your own drafting firm. You partnered with somebody to do this, and it was their first time drawing as well.
Yeah, so that's probably pretty foundational to the story of Wolven. Was, years ago, I realized that it was very obvious to me after, a couple weeks of researching the best ways to build with, that I wanted to do ICF. But at that time, I was working with a different architect. He kind of bullied me into stick frame, and still active duty. I had a lot of deference for his experience and expertise, which ended up being a mistake. That's one thing that I'm very empathetic for the consumer on, is there's no good way to evaluate the actual expertise. You just kind of assume that someone knows what they're doing, and especially if they're charging a high price, you're like, oh, this guy must be great. That's not always the case. It definitely wasn't the case with me. But anyways, that original relationship fell apart, and I was like, okay, I'm back on the ICF bandwagon. I'm just going to make this happen. And so I didn't have any local architects. I didn't have any local engineers that could actually design it for me. I didn't know about you guys. I didn't know about the ICF ecosystem. And so I decided I'm gonna build my own team here. Met a local architect that was a friend of a friend, and basically he just signed up to try to learn how to do it. And so Brian Bordier with Nadura connected me with James Lane to be my engineer for the project. And that was also a learning experience. The workflow of architect to engineer for ICF is not the same as with stick frames. So that communication ended up breaking down quite a bit. My buddy did not appreciate the pushback from the engineer driving his designs. So yeah, that was an interesting experience. But yeah, I've been down in the weeds from design, engineering, and now building. And
that's a great advice too. Like before you move on from that, is the fact that you are putting your hands on every aspect of the job. Like if you I think everybody should, but especially if you're looking at doing this as a professional down the road, the best thing you can do is get your hands on every aspect of this and be in the weeds, as you said, because it is you're not going to learn it from a distance, right? You got to be able to say I did it. I mean, I think that's been my superpower in the ICF world is anybody can call me at any given time. There's very few things that I haven't dealt with. I mean, we've good, bad, or indifferent. I've been there when it happened and dealt with it. And like I tell people, I've held on, I still, more than Heather wants me to, hold on to the business end of a pump, and it's like we still do that. You're learning that from the get-go. And again, another gem that you just said, gold nugget there was you have to realize that there is a little bit of it. There's almost always a little bit of tension with your engineer and your draftsman or architect. So you need to make sure that you do communicate and that they're communicating because like you said, that's almost inherently going to have, like you're going to have the engineer's got an idea and the draftsman or architect has an idea. And a lot of times they don't line up. Sometimes they do. It's great if you get those to mesh and they're awesome and they love each other and it's all kumbaya. That's great. But chances are there's going to be that. And as the general contractor or as the homeowner, you're going to have to be the mediator in there, making sure that it kind of goes which way it goes. And I will say this, sorry, Heather and other draftsmen and architects out there, but the engineer does trump the pretty drawing that you're drawing is definitely is trumped by what engineering says. So engineers are, pretty important in this. So anyways, it was a good little nugget there of you kind of talking about that didn't work perfectly for you on that. And a lot of times it doesn't. So be ready for that.
Yeah, that's definitely, I don't want to call it a con because as long as you know it, it's not a problem. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to treat an ICF build the same as a stick frame build, there's going to be, some wake up calls there.
Yeah, it's not. You're doing it because it's different. I mean, that's, and we tell people that all the time. People are like, well, yeah, when I was stick frame, and I'm like, well, you're not stick frame. And like, this is the whole idea is we're doing it different, like, and to me, one of the analogies I use is people get in a Mercedes and they go, well, this doesn't drive like my Nissan. Well, no shit. It's not a Nissan. It's a Mercedes. Like it's going to drive different. Like you have to have a different expectation for what you're going with. When you go with something that's better and bigger and it's going to be different, there's going to be some different to it. And you can't fight that. Unfortunately, that's just going to happen, but you should almost embrace it and be excited about it. The reason that it's different is because you're not doing it the same way everybody else is. You're doing it better.
Yeah. But one of the cool things, this is what I was going to bring up, and Lance, you can touch on this, is like everything that you have learned from, like, you didn't find our podcast, you didn't find World of Concrete, you didn't find all this until you'd already kind of started on your journey. And so you've learned a ton from just trial and error. It's you've paid your tuition. So the next projects that you're doing, you already have a ton of shortcuts because you're like, oh, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. Like you've got some knowledge on it now that you're like, okay, firsthand, I did this, I made this mistake. You're not going to make that mistake as my client.
Oh, for sure. And, even, there's been a bunch of engineering details that, my concrete contractors, because they're the guys that have been helping me build everything. We're interpreting things. I call my engineer, a couple times a week. And every time we go through something, we're kind of debriefing it. It's like, okay, is there a better way to do this? This created these problems. The drawing was a little ambiguous here. We made this assumption, like how, everything from how do the engineering details present on the actual drawings to how are those engineering details actually built in the field. We're trying to make everything more efficient. So it's funny because a lot of these, and there's nothing that was extremely painful, but but they were they were somewhat painful, and I can guarantee that I will not make those mistakes again, or even the things that weren't mistakes, but they were just inefficient. It's like, okay, we're going to correct that next time. There's, yeah, there's a lot of things that I've learned, and I think there's so much experience in the ICF world that you can tap in now that I know that it exists. But I think there's something to be said for, you know, I think the more experience you get, maybe you kind of forget about some of the obvious things. Whereas for me, it's like, I let's say, even the wall being a little bowed out in the beginning. Well, obviously we fixed it, but it's like we didn't know how to solve that problem right away. Now I know how to do it in the future, but there was nothing in any of the training manuals to discuss that. Obviously, someone super experienced would know how to deal with it right away, and maybe wouldn't even think that was going to be an issue for someone trying to do it themselves for the first time. Yeah, I think there's totally I think anyone that wants to build an ICF project themselves should go for it. It's super fun. It's fairly intuitive, but if there's definitely a little bit of a learning curve that, you know, all the training in the world doesn't prepare you for until you actually get your hands on it. I don't remember exactly where I was going with that point, but
it's amazing too. Like you will, I mean, I tell people all the time, I can be doing this for, 25 years. I still come across stuff that I'm like, I got to figure out how to do it. Like, I mean, stuff, it's just the world that we live in. Like things go different. Like, I mean, I've had concrete mixes that came in just really bad and different than I've ever seen in my life. And I'm like, okay, we have to pivot and figure out how we're going to deal with this. And so like, there's always something you're going to have to deal with. I don't think there's, we're actually doing a podcast after this, the next, I'm pretty sure it's going to be episode 75. We'll see for sure. We've teased it a few times, but we are going to do like an expectations, like, contractor and DIY expectations of not just ICF, but just building in general. Like, I mean, you can't have an expectation that says, everything's going to go perfect. We've had people that literally through the drafting process, they're like, well, this isn't going. And I'm like, dude, if you're already freaking out about something not going right, like you can't imagine when your sheetrocker doesn't show up or your shingles get canceled or you're like, I mean, you're going to deal with stuff the whole way down the line. So being able to change deal with a wall that's crooked or we had a situation there a couple of years ago and like I said, I was not one of my proudest moments, probably one of my worst jobs. I mean, you would think you wouldn't be able to say that after 20 plus years of doing it, but we had a job that, it was the perfect storm. It was literally storming. Literally storming and windy. It was hot. We had a thunderstorm come in. It was 100 degrees with the wind, and the concrete was setting up faster than we can even get it down the pump. The pump was clogging up. The walls were swinging. It was, there was just nothing we could do. It was supposed to be a very simple job. We didn't have a big crew to help us because we were like, this is going to be a slam dunk. It just went every which way wrong it could. And you have to deal with it, right? And so I think it's great that you're acknowledging like, look, we had this thing, but we figured it out and we'll try to avoid that in the future. So just know that happens on every job. That happens everywhere. It doesn't matter if it's your first job or your 150th job. It's going to be the same, thing that can happen. But where are you at? I'm going to let you finish up on your project here, and then I'll let Heather jump into her questions and we'll wrap this thing up. But like, where are you at now in the project? And like I said, you're looking out the wall, looking out the window at it. Where are you at? And, how are things going right now? What's the next move? And tell us where you're at.
Yeah, things are going good. We did an insulated floating slab for our design. So we built the walls directly on top of the footings. So we just poured the interior slab. Next, we'll put the Nadura deck roof up. And then once that's up, I'm actually going to intentionally go on a pause, and I'm going to try to get as many architects and general contractors as I can to come check it out. Because that's a big part of the goal is, these it's not, when you're dealing with this for the first time, I feel like that's very acceptable when you're doing it for your own project, but you don't want your general contractor necessarily, when you're paying him for his learning curve. So one of my goals is I want as many general contractors as possible to be able to confidently build these projects. And so, yeah, the general contractors and architects, I'm going to try to get as many on site. So the roof's going up next. That'll be fun. There was a little less training materials for that, so it's gonna a little bit more of an experiment, but it's gonna go up. It'll be fine. It's just, we'll learn a lot.
Yeah, and we tell people all the time, it's like, it is, I mean, we're doing more and more of it. It's amazing. I'd say it's one of the faster growing products within the ICF world right now is the decking. We're seeing it being requested from, everywhere. I mean, Florida, we got projects in Florida to the hurricane, for hurricanes, we got tornado people, we got people that are just wanting it to put a basement under their garage, be able to park cars on top of it to utilize more space on a small lot. So like, I mean, there's so many. Rooftop decks is another big thing people are using the concrete decking for. So like these concrete decks, concrete roofs, it's a very popular project. But I will tell you, and I can say this as a previous reps that sold these, not a lot of training in it, and honestly it just kind of is something you have to just do. And I don't know, you can kind of explain to people how to do it, and I've spent years doing that, and there's no replacement. I mean, ICF is definitely, it's better to put your hands on it and train it. I can still teach that in a classroom pretty easily and feel confident that they can walk out there and know what they're doing. I don't have that same confidence with the decking thing. You legitimately just have to do it. So you'll see it's not something that has a lot of information out in the world to figure it out, but it's something that definitely is catching on. And wow, we're just, seeing a ton of it. So you're going to love it. But so why don't you roll into the questions here, Heather?
Okay. So first question, it's one of these, we ask 3 questions of all of our podcast guests. So our first question is, what is your most memorable ICF experience?
Oh man, the most memorable one is probably realizing that we couldn't get a boom truck.
I love it. That's a great answer.
Yeah, so
you got to do a line pump.
Every single YouTube video has a boom pump. It's like, oh, this is easy. No, we didn't have the accessibility for it, and so we had to bring in an army of guys to be able to manage that line pump, and it worked great. We had a great crew doing it, and I think there's probably some benefits of it. I think the line pump is a little bit more gentle, and so the concrete's not falling from as high, but it's definitely one of those things. It's all of my plans were based around I just assumed I'd use a boom pump.
Mm-hmm.
That's what everyone does. But with these ADUs, these aren't open lots. There's a house that exists. You got power lines above, in my neighborhood, because it's an older neighborhood in San Diego. And so, it wasn't an option. It was a very fun day on the job. But it was all hands on deck. I think the line pump guys probably did more work than they've ever done on a job. I was calling in buddies. I was like, hey, we just need some bodies.
And there's actually places, I've just through my travels, there's a lot of places where that's what guys use line pumps. So, there's going to be some guys listening to this like, you guys are weenies, this is how we do every day. But it is not. Yeah. It's a workout, dude. When you get spoiled and you just use you use boom pumps all the time, like it's a guy with a remote control sitting there spinning it around. You you're handling it depending upon how good he is. Sometimes it's a lot more work than normal, but it's never as much work as a line pump is. But, and for those that listen and don't know the difference, so you got the boom pump that basically is a big crane-like machine that has, we call them double knuckle pumpers. They're basically, jointed, articulating, pump that goes from the air, and they dump the mud in and he drops it in from above, and basically there's a guy that just kind of like a video game, he's got controllers and he's driving that thing and swinging it around. So you're not doing a ton of moving or weight carry, you're just kind of aiming it. Line pump is on the ground, and it is a hose that comes straight out the back of a trailer, and they pump the concrete or dump the concrete in there. So you're moving the hose loaded with concrete up to the scaffold, up and around everything. You're literally on your shoulder picking it up and carrying it around. So it's a workout. And usually when you see the guys that run line pumps on a regular basis, they're not guys you want to mess with. They can crush your head with their fingers, but they're usually for a reason. It's a pretty, don't envy you there. But like I said, kudos to the guys out there listening that use them all the time. I won't mess with you. I'm a line pump or a boom pump guy. So
yeah, I've never actually had a line pump on any of my jobs. So
they're hard to find out here. Remember, we tried to get one for one of our jobs. I can't remember what it was. Oh, yeah, I do.
The basement.
Remember. Yep. And we were like, we can use the line pump because it was just a small little job and we didn't want it. So, and we couldn't even find one.
Nope.
So yeah, that's different. But.
That's crazy. I remember you telling us that story. That's awesome. It's kind of like how you don't think about where you're going to store stuff, and
right.
When you get it and it all shows up, and you're like, oh man, same thing. So okay, second question then, and this is I'm really excited to hear your answer on this one, just because of where you're at in your business. But what are you looking forward to?
The future of ICF.
The future of ICF. The future of Wolven Homes.
That's a tough one because I'm excited about a lot of things. ICF is just it's an amazing product that unlocks so many future benefits. Coming from a background where I had two uncles that were general contractors, uncle that's electrician, my grandfather was a union plasterer his whole life. So I grew up with the trades, and before I started Wolven, I just was kind of a fan of the construction tech industry. And, before I decided to design my own ADU, I was looking at a lot of the prefab companies and the ones that were really being innovative. And it seemed like people had given up on, traditional construction. And it's like, you know what, that problem, it's not even worth solving. Let's just figure out how to build these things in factories. And I understand why that sentiment exists, but I think that ICF really unlocks a lot of innovation, not just in the material, but also in the process. One thing, I have the benefit that I've got the same crew going from excavation to the roof. So the entire building envelope, I've got the same crew doing it. And it allows us to really experiment with faster ways of putting it up. And so a lot of the value propositions that I've seen from a lot of these prefabricated companies is they're not actually building things cheaper. They're just saying they can do it faster. And that just requires some process innovation. It's like if you're still doing the, top of the dollar for your prefab, but you're saying you can do it in a week or in a month, it's like, I don't know. I bet I can figure out how to do it pretty close to that speed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm excited about. The material speaks for itself. The value proposition is very obvious. From the fire ratings to the energy efficiency, the insurability, like that is a no-brainer to me. But what I'm super excited about is just trying to figure out what are the limits on how fast we can do this. And I think there's a really high ceiling for speed with ICF that, I think that's probably what I'm most excited about. And there's also, even for this wave of AI and technology, you really can't capture the value of that with stick framing. It's basically raw materials and pure labor. You're paying pure, there's only so much innovation that can go on there. But ICF being, if we think of the forms as being a modular product, there is a lot of technology that you can build into that. It does make it easier to leverage some of this technology. And so I think there's a really bright future for ICF, regardless of, all the innovation. I think it's going to it's going to be caught up in the tailwinds of a lot of this innovation. And I think it's going to be even more obvious than it is now to build with it in the future.
Yeah, I think I've just from the short time we've got to get to know you and stuff, your superpower really is understanding process, procedures, efficiency, stuff like that. And so I think you definitely see that. And I couldn't agree with you more. Like that's there, you hear people, there's got to be a better way. There is a better way. There is a better way. We have it already. Innovation in the stick frame world is adding things to the stick frame. Like you're not going to innovate a 2x6. You're going to innovate the products you put over top of the 2x6. So you're actually adding cost to the material. You're having to add materials to innovate, where we have a material that's innovative already, that's been around. We've proven it. It's literally an innovative product that you don't have to add anything to. It's done. We laugh because Heather and I said that whole time we were at PCBC it was like being in bizarro world sometimes when these people talk about, we're going to build these resilient houses out of 2x6s. We're like, how's that been working for you so far? Like, you guys just lost 10,000 structures that were all built that same damn way. And you're going to sit here and tell me that we're going to innovate the product that we haven't just been the same forever, right? Like, so like it was funny. And then you hear these people say, and you got to experience it in firsthand with us, people saying, yeah, if there was just a way to build a house that did, XYZ that didn't burn down. And we're like in the back of the room holding up our hand going, there is, and we're doing it. and luckily for us, that's what WICFA does. Like, we're out there spreading the word. We're the voice. We're trying to get it out there. So we met with every one of those people, a lot of the speakers afterwards. We got to meet with them afterwards and say, hey, you're saying this, well, here's our product. And they're like, wow, okay, yeah, we need to work that into our presentation. So I agree with you. I think that we are getting pulled along in this, and we're trying to, as WICFA, push ourselves to the front of that so that we're part of the wind at the front, not the tailwind, I don't know what the headwind, I guess, right? So like, we want to be at the headwind, not the tailwind, but I know that we're getting pulled along with all this because I've seen it. I've been doing it long enough to see where people are like starting to come back to us. The whole reason we were at PCBC was because people start reaching out and saying, hey, it'd be great if you could come talk about this stuff. I mean, we're hearing about it. So I think you're 100% right. I think the future is bright. I think the future is right in front of us right now. We're actually participating in it. So it's super cool. But the final question we ask, I'm going to lead you in on a little bit. I want you to start with the explanation or the definition of Wolven, because we asked you that, and that was super cool. And like at 51 years old, I learned a new definition of what a word meant that I didn't know, that I thought was really cool. So I want you to tell us what Wolven means and how you picked that, or why you picked that, or what it means. And then tell us, like, we got listeners down in San Diego. We got listeners that may be around. Tell us what why would they work with Wolven? You've kind of already talked about what you want to do in the future, but if somebody wants to reach out to you, tell them a little bit about what you do, where you do it, what you want to do, and give us a little bit of a pitch on Wolven.
Yeah. So the name Wolven's a little cheesy.
I don't think it is. I think it's awesome.
I've always been obsessed with wolves. Last name's Wolfsmith. I can only assume that that's why I first started loving wolves. And I understand you guys are in Idaho, so maybe, perception of wolves is a little different up there, but I have the more, I don't know. I just love them. And, when I first started this, I was stuck in the design process for years, and I was trying to figure out how to solve that problem. And I had a different name that I kind of hated, but it was more specific to design. And then I quickly realized that unless we're actually affecting the outcomes of these homes for consumers, none of the other problems really matter. Like, I can make a tool that makes an architect, save $1,000 on their bottom line early on. That doesn't actually make the home better or save any money for the consumer. And so when I made that pivot to trying to solve how do we actually build better homes more affordably, needed to change the name. And I was like, if I'm going to commit my life to this, I got to find a name that I'm super proud of. And I got to build a logo that if everything fails, I can at least sell some merch or something. metal band concert t-shirts. And so Wolven, it just means wolf-like. And so the way I kind of think about it is every single person that we build a home for, they're a member of the pack. And so everything that we're doing is trying to protect the consumer. Like, we're looking out for you at every step. We're going to build you a better home, and we're going to do everything possible to make sure that all of that value is transferred to our consumers and clients. And so, not just at the at the actual build phase, but, down the road. I think that's something that was, we went into, I don't need to name names, but we went into one of the innovation talks at PCBC, and it's like, there's so much, these companies are building such a crappy product that they probably don't even want it. They probably never want to talk to their customers ever again after they build that home. They can't stand behind it. And so that's the whole motivation behind Wolven. It's like, you're part of the pack. We're gonna support you guys for as long as that home is surviving, which is gonna be a lot longer than I'm alive. That home's gonna last for a long, long time.
I love it. It's dead on, and you don't have to feel weird. I'm obsessed with lions, so I don't my lion thing. Like if you look around my house, I've got a tattoo on my arm, lion. Yeah, we're big time lion fans. So we've got some pretty cool big artwork in our house, a couple of them of lions. So your wolf is my lion, so I get it. We're the same. I just different. Yeah, we like wolves up here. We just don't like that they eat our cows and our elk up here. That's our problem. But if they just leave that alone, we'd be fine. But no, that's awesome, man. Yeah. And you guys probably don't have that issue down there. They probably don't have to, worry about the wolves eating all your elk. But anyways, great guest, great interview, great information. Like all this stuff is so cool. This is exactly why we wanted to have you on here, and I think it brought so much value to everybody and our listeners that are listening. So thank you so much for taking the time to do this and jumping on here and doing this. I look forward to the next few episodes with you, because I think we're going to do some follow up on this and just like where you at, progress report kind of stuff. So I'm really excited to have you on and go over that. And I think you're going to come up with your own innovation within this. I really have a lot of faith. Like just talking with you, I know you AI and technology and different things like that I think that are going to continue to grow the process, of how we do this and make it more efficient. So that's the way we're going to get better at this, is more efficiency and how we can do this and get an ICF out there to everybody for that. I do need, I'm thinking about, we need to shout out our sponsors. We do have our major concrete sponsors is the Insulated Concrete Form Manufacturers Association, the ICFMA, the National Ready Mix Concrete Association, the NRMCA, and the NAHB, National Association of Home Builders. So
lots of initials, and we like that.
Tons of acronyms. A lot of acronyms in this world, but we're always looking for more acronyms. So, but without those guys, we couldn't do what we're doing. They're at the World Insulated Concrete Form Association. They are our biggest supporters and sponsors, but we also couldn't do it without our industry professionals and members like you, Lance. Like, I mean, this is super cool to begin this journey of bringing on our members that have joined and joined us and help us with our voice and our mission that we're trying to accomplish here with the ICFMA. Anyone that wants to get involved, please do. We'll put that in the show notes as well, how to join WICFA and get involved with what we're doing. If you have events that you want us to come and participate in, whether that be through WICFA or myself and Heather, we are doing speaking events or any kind of, even if you've got something you think it would be a good idea for us to have a booth at, please reach out to us at Build With ICF on all socials, info@buildwithicf.com. And then you can reach out to us through wicfa.org as well. I'm going to put all of Lance's stuff in the show notes as well, so you'll have his social media. You can go stalk him on there and watch what he's doing. You can go and check out his website, and I'll put some emails and different ways to contact you on there so that they can reach out and
get going on their ADU.
Exactly. There's more. We need more ADUs out there, so yes. We can do that. But I think that's it. You got anything, Heather?
No, just wanted to say thank you to everybody, and I acknowledge the podcast dogs apparently, because they're getting restless.
Yeah, I'm watching I can see the audio on the board, and I'm always watching to see if it's picking up on the WrestleMania that's happening with the podcast dogs right now. They came in hot. They were sleeping, and then they just got excited here at the end and started wrestling. So if you hear that, that's the podcast dogs. But anyway, anything in closing, Lance, that we missed here or forgot to?
No, I just would like to put it out there that, I know you guys are going to put the contact information there, but people can reach me at lance@wolvenhomes.com. That's my email. I just kind of want to put myself out there as a resource. Obviously, if anyone's building in Southern California, please hit me up. I'd love to support you. but yeah, just if anything that I said, hits home and you're about to take on a project, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, and I think you hit it on the head right from the beginning. You said at the beginning of the episode that, you didn't realize that there was this network out there. And I think that's what we're, trying to really enlarge, is that network, and make it people more aware of the network that's out there. So that's definitely a big part of what we're doing with WICFA and what we do with this podcast is to make sure that we are creating a larger network so that there is somebody down in Southern California can reach out to another guy in Southern California or wherever. So thank you for putting yourself out there and what you're doing, because that's awesome. I think that's about it. You got anything, Heather?
Nope, you asked me that already. So we're good to go. Thank you. Thanks for listening, everybody. And we will catch you on the next podcast.